Bribery, rishwat, and its destruction in society. What if I told you that the very hand you use to accept a bribe is the same hand that's writing the downfall of your own future? Ladies and gentlemen, bribery, rishwat, a word that sounds so small, but behind it hides a monster silently eating away at trust, justice, and dignity in our society. Let me ask you a question. How many of you believe that talent alone decides success? We love to think so. But the truth, many doors don't open because someone else slipped an envelope under the table. Think about it. A deserving student doesn't get the job because someone else paid for it. A poor man waits years for justice because the judge's pocket was heavier than his file. An entire system collapses, not with an explosion, but with a quiet exchange of money. That's bribery. It looks like progress for one person, but it's poison for everyone else. Imagine a building, strong, tall, shining, but inside termites are eating the wood. From outside it looks perfect. But one day, without warning, it collapses. That's our society. Bribery is the termite, silent, hidden, but destructive. Here's the shocking truth. Bribery doesn't just destroy nations, it destroys families. A father who teaches his child to pay a bribe today teaches him to cheat tomorrow. And a generation raised on shortcuts will never learn the power of honesty, patience, and hard work. Is that the legacy we want to leave behind? So today I leave you with this choice. Be the person who sells fairness for a quick shortcut, or be the rare, courageous soul who proves that integrity is priceless. Because when the story of this society is written, your name will either be in the list of those who fed the monster of bribery, or in the golden pages of those who fought it. The future is watching. The choice is yours. And the legacy begins now. Bribery is a hidden termite that silently destroys society from within. It denies deserving people opportunities, replacing fairness with money. It creates anger, helplessness, and mistrust in communities. Families and future generations inherit corruption when bribery becomes normal. Real change begins with individuals refusing to pay or accept bribes. Integrity is not just a moral choice. It's the foundation of a stronger, fairer future. Imagine standing in front of a house that looks strong from the outside, its walls painted fresh, its windows shining, its gates standing tall. But inside, deep in the structure, termites have already begun their work. You don't see them, you don't hear them, but day by day, they eat away at the wood, hollowing out the very beams holding the building upright. One day, without warning, the house collapses. People around are shocked, wondering how something that looked so strong could fall so quickly. That is exactly what bribery does to a society. On the surface, life looks normal. Businesses are running, schools are open, offices are busy, courts are functioning. But behind the scenes, something hidden is eating away at the foundation. And that something is bribery. It doesn't roar like a lion. It whispers like a snake. It doesn't break walls with a hammer. It slips through cracks quietly, leaving destruction that no one notices until it's too late. That's why bribery is so dangerous. It doesn't just corrupt one person's pocket, it seeps into the very DNA of society. Think about this. A young man studies day and night, fueled by dreams of lifting his family out of poverty. He sacrifices his sleep, his comfort, even his health, just to pass his exams and secure a job. The day of the interview arrives. He walks in with his heart racing, believing his knowledge and hard work will finally pay off. But what happens? The job is already gone. Not because he wasn't capable, not because he didn't deserve it, but because someone else had already slipped an envelope into the recruiter's hand. That envelope was worth more than his years of effort. Tell me, how do you heal that kind of heartbreak? How do you explain to him that his talent wasn't enough because money spoke louder than merit? This is what bribery does. It creates invisible walls that block the path of those who work honestly while opening secret doors for those willing to pay. And the worst part, it teaches people that talent, honesty, and hard work are worthless without money. Isn't that the slowest, cruelest kind of death a society can face. Now picture a hospital emergency room. A poor father brings in his daughter who needs urgent treatment. He pleads with the staff, his eyes wet, his hands shaking. But the nurse whispers coldly, "Sir, if you want the doctor to see her quickly, you'll need to pay something extra." In that moment, his child's life depends not on medical expertise, not on the duty of care, but on his ability to bribe. If he can't pay, his daughter waits, and every second could mean the difference between life and death. Do you see it? Bribery doesn't just take money, it takes humanity, it takes dignity, it takes life. And when it becomes normal, when people shrug and say, "That's just how things work here," the termite has already reached too deep. The structure is rotting even though from the outside everything looks fine. Bribery eats into trust. Trust between citizens and their leaders. Trust between patients and doctors. Trust between students and their teachers. It's like a disease that spreads quietly from one heart to another, from one generation to the next. One man once said to me, "You can fight against a lion because you can see it, but how do you fight against a shadow?" Bribery is that shadow. It hides in dark corners, in closed offices, in whispered conversations. You can't always see it, but you feel its weight when your effort is dismissed, your rights are delayed, your future is stolen. And here's the bitter truth. Bribery is never just about money. It's about fairness. It's about justice. It's about whether people believe in the system or stop believing altogether. When a poor man loses hope that his complaint will ever be heard without paying a bribe, he gives up on justice. When a young graduate loses hope that his degree will ever open doors without connections and payments, he gives up on hard work. And when enough people give up, society itself collapses. Not with the noise of an explosion, but with the silence of lost hope. Because a nation doesn't fall when buildings crumble or banks run dry. A nation falls the moment its people stop believing that honesty matters. And bribery is the termite that steals that belief day by day without anyone noticing. Picture this: a tall, magnificent skyscraper rising high into the clouds. From a distance, it glitters like a jewel in the sunlight. People walk by and marvel at its beauty, its strength, its presence. But what they don't see is that inside its walls, the wooden beams are being eaten alive by termites. Each day, silently and invisibly, they chew away at the foundation. The building still looks impressive from the outside, but one day, without warning, the entire structure comes crashing down. That is exactly what bribery does to a nation. It doesn't strike with bombs or earthquakes. It doesn't announce itself with noise. It works silently, gradually, like a hidden disease that spreads until it's too late. On the surface, everything seems fine. People go to work, children go to school, businesses run, offices stay open. But underneath, the very foundation of fairness and trust is being eaten away. And when that collapses, everything else collapses with it. Bribery always looks small at first. A little money slipped across a desk, a favor in exchange for a signature, a shortcut to avoid paperwork. At the time, it seems harmless, even convenient. Everyone does it, people say. But here's the truth. Just like termites, bribery is never satisfied with one bite. It spreads, it multiplies, it eats more and more until the entire structure is hollow. One bribe leads to another, and before you know it, a whole system is built on corruption instead of integrity. Think about the court of law. Justice is supposed to be blind, fair, equal for all. But in a society where bribery rules, justice doesn't wear a blindfold, it wears a price tag. A wealthy criminal can buy his way out of punishment, while a poor innocent man rots in jail because he can't afford to pay. On paper, the court still functions, the building still stands, the judges still sit in their chairs. But the spirit of justice is gone, eaten alive by corruption. How long can a nation survive when its people no longer believe in justice? Or take education. A young girl works day and night to achieve the highest grades. She dreams of becoming a doctor, not for money, but to serve her community. She writes exam after exam with burning determination. But when the results come, she finds her name missing from the merit list. Why? Because someone else bought that seat with money. Imagine the pain of a student who sees years of effort vanish in a single moment, not because she wasn't smart enough, but because someone else's money spoke louder than her dreams. That one bribe doesn't just steal her future, it steals her faith in the system. And when faith is stolen, the society is already collapsing from the inside. Bribery creates illusions. From the outside, things still appear to work. Roads are being built, businesses are opening, leaders are giving speeches. But if you look closer, the roads are cracked because the contractor bribed his way into using cheap materials. The businesses thrive not because of innovation, but because they paid to cut corners. The leaders stay in power not because people trust them, but because money keeps the system tilted in their favor. It's a shiny building on the outside, but hollow inside. I once heard someone say, bribery is like rust. It doesn't destroy the iron in a single night, but day by day. It weakens it until one day the whole structure breaks. That is why societies suddenly collapse, even when they looked strong for years. History is full of nations that crumbled not because of foreign enemies, but because of corruption eating them from within. When bribery becomes normal, when people accept it as part of life, the termites have already won. And the tragedy is this: bribery doesn't just destroy systems, it destroys hope. A father who teaches his son that success comes from bribes, not hard work, is unknowingly passing down termites to the next generation. A doctor who demands extra money before saving a life is telling society that humanity itself is for sale. A teacher who accepts gifts for grades is teaching children that honesty is weakness. Piece by piece, the foundation is hollowed out until the building is standing only by illusion. The danger of bribery is not only in the money exchanged, it's in the message it carries: that truth doesn't matter, that effort doesn't matter, that fairness doesn't matter. And once a society starts believing that, the collapse is inevitable. The building may still be standing, but inside, it is already broken. Have you ever felt that sharp sting of unfairness? That moment when you know you did everything right, you worked hard, you gave your best, but the reward was handed to someone else who didn't deserve it. That burning mix of anger and helplessness that settles in your chest, it's not just a personal feeling. It's the wound that bribery leaves in the soul of society. Because bribery doesn't simply exchange money, it exchanges dignity for despair, hope for bitterness, and fairness for frustration. Imagine a young man who spends years preparing for a government job. He wakes up before dawn, studies until his eyes ache, and dreams of the day he can bring respect to his family by earning a position through his own merit. The exam results are announced, and his name is not there. Instead, he hears whispers that the positions were already sold long before the test. He sits quietly in his room, staring at his books, and wonders if all those sleepless nights were for nothing. That quiet moment of despair may not make headlines, but it is the silent destruction bribery leaves behind. It's not just his dream that was stolen, it's his belief in the system. Now imagine a farmer standing in line at a government office, holding a file of documents to get approval for a small loan to buy seeds. He waits hours in the scorching sun, only to be told by the clerk, if you want your file to move, you'll need to pay something extra. The farmer doesn't have extra. He barely has enough to buy the seeds. So, his file gathers dust, while someone else who could afford the bribe walks away with the approval. That farmer returns home empty-handed, his fields left barren. The system didn't just deny him money, it denied him dignity. It denied his family food on the table, and it left him with a deep wound of helplessness. And what about a patient in a hospital corridor? His wife is inside, struggling to breathe, and he begs the staff to admit her quickly. Instead of rushing to save her, they quietly hint at fees that aren't listed on any receipt. In that terrifying moment when every second counts, he is forced to weigh his wife's life against the cash in his pocket. That's not just corruption. That's cruelty dressed as procedure, and it leaves scars deeper than money could ever measure. Bribery does something even more sinister. It creates two classes of people, those who can pay and those who cannot. The ones who can pay glide through life with doors opening in front of them. The ones who cannot are forced to watch their opportunities stolen, their struggles ignored, their rights denied. This division breeds resentment. It fuels anger. And slowly, society begins to tear apart, not because of outsiders, but because of the injustice eating it from within. I once overheard a man say, "It's not the size of the bribe that hurts me. It's the fact that my honesty has no value." Think about that. Bribery doesn't just steal money, it steals the very meaning of integrity. When people see that dishonesty is rewarded while honesty is punished, what lesson do they learn? They learn that values are useless, that principles are expensive luxuries only fools can afford. And when an entire generation grows up believing that, what kind of future are we left with? The anger and helplessness bribery creates don't disappear. They sit quietly inside people like smoldering ashes, ready to ignite into frustration, protest, or even violence. A society where citizens feel cheated again and again eventually loses its patience. Trust in leaders fades. Faith in justice crumbles. Respect for laws evaporates. What remains is a dangerous void where people begin to believe that survival comes only through cheating, lying, and paying their way forward. That void is the true destruction bribery leaves behind. It's easy to count the money exchanged in a bribe, but impossible to measure the pain it causes in people's hearts. The bitterness of being cheated doesn't show up in statistics. It shows up in the student who gives up on his dream, in the farmer who loses his harvest, in the patient who loses his loved one. Bribery doesn't just steal opportunities, it steals hope. And when hope is stolen, what is left for society to stand on? A father sits at the dinner table with his young son. The boy, wide-eyed and curious, asks, "Papa, how did you get my school admission so quickly when other kids are still waiting?" The father smiles proudly, thinking he has done something clever, and replies, "Son, sometimes you just have to give a little gift to the right person. That's how the world works." The boy nods, storing that lesson deep inside his heart. He may not fully understand it now, but one day, when faced with his own challenges, he will remember that his father told him money can bend rules, gifts can buy favors, and shortcuts are smarter than patience. In that one casual moment, a seed is planted. That seed is bribery, passed down not as shame, but as tradition. And like every seed, it grows. Bribery doesn't just damage governments or institutions. It seeps into families, it reshapes values, it rewrites the story of entire generations. A child who watches his parents pay their way through problems learns that honesty is too slow, that integrity is too expensive, that rules are not meant to be followed but bypassed. What chance does a society have if its very foundation, its children, are taught that corruption is normal? Imagine a teenager who sees his father pay off a traffic policeman after breaking the signal. At first, he may be surprised, maybe even curious. But when he hears his father laugh and say, "It's nothing, this is how you save time," the lesson is imprinted. Years later, when that teenager grows up, why would he think twice before bribing his professor for exam marks or paying off an official for a fake certificate? To him, it isn't even corruption, it's just life as he was taught it. This is how bribery quietly destroys families, not through dramatic scandals, but through small, everyday choices that reshape the moral compass of children. A father might think he is protecting his child's future by paying a bribe for an admission. A mother might think she is helping her family by offering money to push her husband's promotion file. But what they are truly doing is teaching their children that success doesn't belong to the hardworking, but to the cunning. And when children grow up believing this, they inherit not dreams but shortcuts, not values but compromises, And the tragedy is that once this cycle begins, it becomes almost impossible to break. A son who grows up watching his father bribe will most likely bribe when his turn comes. A daughter who sees her mother pay off officials to get things done will accept corruption as a way of life. Entire generations start to view bribery not as wrong, but as survival. What was once shameful becomes normal, and what was once condemned becomes tradition. I once heard a young man say, "My father always told me honesty doesn't feed the stomach, but money does." He said it without guilt, almost with pride. That single statement revealed the destruction bribery causes within families. It is not just about stealing opportunities from others. It is about stealing truth from your own children, robbing them of the chance to grow up with clean values. Think about the long-term effect. A child raised in a corrupt home grows into a corrupt leader, a corrupt teacher, a corrupt doctor, a corrupt judge. Then the entire society is filled with people who were once innocent children, but were taught early on that bribery was acceptable. And once a society reaches that stage, it doesn't just lose fairness, it loses its soul. Bribery is not just a transaction of money, it is a transaction of values. Every time a parent pays a bribe and justifies it in front of their children, they are selling honesty at the cost of convenience. They are trading integrity for a shortcut. They are placing poison in the hands of the very generation that is supposed to heal and uplift the nation. The destruction is subtle, but it is devastating. Families that should be teaching patience, honesty, sacrifice, and resilience end up teaching trickery, deceit, and manipulation. Instead of raising problem solvers, we raise shortcut seekers. Instead of nurturing leaders of integrity, we produce generations who know no way forward except through corruption. And so, a chain begins, passed down like an inheritance no one asked for, but everyone accepts. The scariest part of bribery's impact on families is that it feels normal. Parents don't think they're doing harm when they pay for faster results. They think they're protecting their loved ones. But in reality, they are passing down a virus more dangerous than any disease. Because money once spent is gone, but values once corrupted are inherited forever. And when a generation grows up on those corrupted values, the entire society becomes nothing more than a house built on sand, waiting for the first storm to wash it away. Change never begins with grand speeches on television or bold promises written in policy papers. It doesn't wait for new laws or new governments. It doesn't fall from the sky in the shape of a miracle. Real change begins in the smallest of places, with the smallest of acts, often unseen by the world but powerful enough to ripple through an entire society. Bribery may feel like a mountain too big to move, but the truth is, mountains are moved by the first crack, and that crack is made when one person chooses to say no. Imagine a man standing at a government counter, told quietly by the clerk, "Your file won't move unless you pay something." He feels the weight of the choice. On one side, frustration and delay. On the other side, a simple payment that would make things easier. Most people would slide the money across without hesitation. But imagine this man saying, "No, I won't pay. Do your job honestly." He leaves with his file still untouched, but he carries something greater: his dignity, his honesty, his refusal to fuel the termite of corruption. The world may not notice his stand, but his children will. They will see that their father didn't bend. And that lesson will echo louder than any speech. Every act of refusal, no matter how small, repairs a crack in the foundation. A young student refusing to pay for leaked exam papers is rebuilding. A shopkeeper who says no to an inspector demanding a gift is rebuilding. A driver who refuses to bribe a policeman, even if it means waiting longer, is rebuilding. One person refusing may not change the whole system overnight, but it changes their corner of the world, and that's how revolutions are born. Bribery thrives on acceptance. It grows because people believe that's just how things work. But imagine what happens when enough people start saying, "Not anymore." Imagine a society where parents proudly tell their children, We will wait, but we will not pay a bribe. Imagine offices where employees whisper not about how much was paid, but about how someone succeeded without corruption. The termite cannot survive in sunlight, and bribery cannot survive when people refuse to feed it. There's a story of a woman who went to renew her ID card. The officer hinted she could skip the long queue if she cooperated. She shook her head and replied, "My time is not more valuable than theirs. I will wait." Others in line noticed her courage. Some were inspired, and little by little, the culture of silence began to break. That single act of resistance may sound ordinary, but ordinary acts are what extraordinary change is built upon. What most people don't realize is that refusing a bribe is not just about saving money. It's about declaring that honesty is still alive. It's about sending a message to the next person, the next generation, that values are not for sale. One spark of integrity lights another until an entire society is glowing with the possibility of something better. Yes, refusing is difficult. It comes with discomfort, delays, and even losses. But every act of refusal is an investment. It may not pay immediately, but it builds a future where fairness becomes normal again. Where the deserving student doesn't fear losing her chance. Where the patient doesn't fear losing his life. Where the farmer doesn't fear losing his crop. Refusing a bribe may look like a small stone thrown into a massive lake, but the ripples spread far beyond what the eye can see. A man once said, "Corruption wins when honesty stays silent." That silence is what we must break, and the power to break it lies not in parliaments or ministries, but in everyday choices. The choice to refuse, the choice to wait, the choice to suffer short-term discomfort for long-term justice. Because in the end, rebuilding society is not about speeches or slogans. It is about individuals deciding that their integrity is not for sale. It is about millions of small refusals that together form a movement. It is about people who understand that they may not change the world in a single day, but they can change the story of honesty in their family, their community, their workplace. And if enough of us choose that story, bribery will no longer be the air we breathe. It will become the dust of the past, swept away by the courage of those who dared to say no. Integrity is not just a word we read in books or hear in sermons. It is the invisible foundation upon which entire societies stand. Without it, nothing truly lasts. Roads may be built, towers may rise, wealth may flow, but if the foundation is rotten, everything eventually collapses. Integrity is the one ingredient that transforms a group of people into a community into a nation, and a nation into a legacy. Bribery, on the other hand, is the slow erosion of that foundation. It whispers to people that values don't matter, that truth is negotiable, that character is optional. But when integrity dies, what is left for a society to hold on to? Think of a bridge stretching over a river. People cross it every day, confident it will hold their weight. But the only reason they trust it is because they believe the engineers built it with integrity. They believe the bolts are strong, the steel is pure, the design is honest. Now imagine if that bridge was built by men who cut corners after bribing inspectors. The bolts are weak, the steel is cheap, the design is flawed. The bridge may look fine on the outside, but one day, without warning, it will collapse, taking with it innocent lives. That collapse is not an accident. It is the direct result of a missing value, integration replaced by corruption. Integrity is the unseen promise that keeps people believing in each other. When you walk into a hospital, you believe the doctor will treat you with care, not calculate how much money he can extract from you first. When you enter a courtroom, you believe the judge will weigh truth, not weigh envelopes. When you send your child to school, you believe the teacher will grade fairly, not favor the one who paid more. Every time bribery steps into these spaces, that belief is shattered. And once belief is gone, society itself begins to crumble, not because of lack of resources, but because of lack of trust. A man once told me a story about his father. His father had the chance to pay a bribe to secure land papers quickly. but he refused. For months, the process dragged on and people mocked him, saying, "Why suffer so much when you can just pay and finish it?" But years later, when his children grew up, they remembered that their father had never compromised. One of them said, "He gave us something more valuable than land. He gave us an example. That is integrity. It does not give immediate comfort, but it gives lifelong strength." Bribery tries to sell the illusion of progress. It tells you, pay now, succeed faster. But integrity tells a different story: wet, struggle, but succeed with honor. The problem is, society often rewards the illusion over the truth. The man who cheats looks successful. The honest man looks slow. But in the long run, it is always integrity that sustains. The man who paid his way to the top may fall with the system when it collapses. But the man of integrity will remain standing because he built his life on a foundation no termite can eat. The future of any nation is not written in its wealth or its weapons, but in the integrity of its people. A society that values money over morals may rise quickly, but it will fall even faster. A society that values integrity may struggle at first, but it will endure for generations. Integrity is not just a personal virtue, it is a collective shield. When enough people hold on to it, they create a wall against bribery, against corruption, against decay. Think of it like a candle in a dark room. One candle may not chase away all the shadows, but it gives light enough for others to see. When more candles are lit, the darkness disappears. Integrity works the same way. One honest act may feel small, but it sparks another, and soon those sparks become a flame strong enough to burn away corruption. In the end, bribery destroys because it convinces people to trade their integrity for convenience. But integrity, once protected, multiplies into something far greater than money could ever buy. It becomes the very heartbeat of a fair society, the invisible bond between people, the foundation of a nation that will not collapse. And when history looks back, it will not remember how many shortcuts we took. It will remember whether we stood with values, whether we built something that lasted, whether we protected the one treasure no thief can steal and no bribe can buy, our integrity. ChatGPT said, "So I ask you tonight, how much longer will we allow this silent poison to flow through our veins? How much longer will we sell tomorrow for the comfort of today? How much longer will we let talent go unseen, justice go unheard, and honesty go unrewarded?" We say we want change. We say we want fairness. We say we want justice. But change will not come from the top until it begins at the bottom. Change will not come from others until it begins with us. Change will not come someday, it must come today. Every time you refuse to give, you are changing the system. Every time you refuse to take, you are changing the culture. Every time you choose integrity over convenience, you are changing the future. Do not underestimate the power of one honest decision. One no to bribery is stronger than 1,000 speeches against it. One act of integrity is louder than corruption's loudest whispers. One person's courage can light a fire that spreads to millions. The termites of bribery are eating at our foundation. But we are the builders. We are the protectors. We are the generation that can stop the collapse. And the question is not whether change is possible. The question is whether we are brave enough to begin it. So, I leave you with this truth. Bribery is not just a crime, it is a choice. Integrity is not just a virtue, it is also a choice. And every choice you make writes the story of the society you will leave behind. Choose wisely. Choose courage. Choose integrity. Because long after money fades, long after buildings crumble, long after power changes hands, it is integrity that will remain.